the Colorado Avalanche, a once mighty oak whose branches now appear to be wilting under the age and injuries of its core players. The Avs still definitely boast elite talent, both among the defensive core and the forwards, with guys like Nathan MacKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, and Cale Makar leading the way. With such high-end talent, the expectations are, once again, that Colorado will be competing for the Stanley Cup this year. Can this floundering empire manage to cling on to life for another year?
I admit it. Last year was rough.
Last year, the Colorado Avalanche were their usual high-flying offense, leading the league in total goals scored, buoyed by their two stars in Nathan MacKinnon and Mikko Rantanen, along with Cale Makar contributing from the back end. The Colorado Avalanche looked like a team that was going to be almost impossible to stop once they got rolling, and especially if they got good goaltending. They did get that from Alexander Georgiev for most of the year, and despite the mounting injuries on their lineup, the Avalanche were rolling throughout the year, but still only managed to finish third in a very tight Central Division where 3 teams had 50 wins on the year. In round 1, they took on one of those teams, the Winnipeg Jets, creating the fabled matchup of an unstoppable object of the Avalanche's high-flying offense with the immovable wall that was Vezina Trophy winner Connor Hellebuyck. It turns out that wall was plenty movable as the Colorado Avalanche ripped through Hellebuyck and the Jets' defense in pretty quick fashion, winning the series in 5 games. But things weren't going to get easier as they had to face the division winner and the class of the Western Conference, the Dallas Stars, in the second round, where they faced another stout goaltender in Jake Ottinger. Unlike Hellebuyck, though, Ottinger was equal to the task of stopping the Colorado Avalanche offense, holding them to 1 goal or fewer in 3 of the 6 games in the series. With the scoring drying up and Georgiev not able to hold his own in a goaltender's duel, the Avalanche fell in Game 6 in a double overtime heartbreaker to Dallas. Jared Bednar returns behind the bench of the Colorado Avalanche just a few years removed from winning the Stanley Cup as their head coach. The Avs have been a powerhouse ever since Bednar took over as coach in 2016, with their menacing high-flying offense and incredible special teams. His job is probably fairly safe for the year, unless the Avalanche somehow manage to miss the playoffs, which would be quite frankly very shocking. Bednar is just a good coach. He's won at every level he's been a coach, one of the few who's managed to win at the junior and AHL levels, and then be a winner at the NHL level.
You're a star, you're on top, somebody bring you some hand. You should kill yourself.
There's no way you can name anybody other than Nate MacKinnon as the best player on the Colorado Avalanche. Dude was an absolute offensive menace for the Avalanche last year, coming off a career-best 140.51 goal season that earned him the honor of winning his first Hart Memorial Trophy. The best player in the league and still in his prime, Nate MacKinnon is just an absolute joy to watch with his speed, incredible shot, and playmaking ability. 140 points is going to be a tough act for him to follow, but luckily he has the skill and the weapons around him to make it a good chase.
Oh, this guy again.
Speaking of those weapons, the Robin to MacKinnon's Batman, Mikko Rantanen, will be flanking the dog on the first line. While MacKinnon is all about that powerful shot, Mikko Rantanen is a much more cerebral playmaker, which is what makes the two such a deadly duo. On their opposite wing, though, we have Jonathan Drouin. No, I did not misspeak. It is Jonathan Drouin, who, yes, had a very nice career year of 19 goals and 56 points, but for a former top 5 overall pick and a guy whose only value right now is basically name recognition in a trade, you're hoping the Avalanche are going to upgrade that top line for MacKinnon and Rantanen's stakes. On the second line, Casey Mittelstadt was the big acquisition at the trade deadline last year, ostensibly to replace Gabe Landeskog, who may or may not have been mummified over the offseason in an attempt to heal whatever injury has now affected him. I'm pretty sure last I heard it was leprosy. But Mittelstadt was supposed to be flanked by Val Nichushkin and Arturi Lehkonen on that line, but Nichushkin is still coming back from serving his suspension as part of going into the Players Association Players Assistance Program during the playoffs last year. The earliest Val Nichushkin could return would be mid-November, but at least the Avs know when Nichushkin might be back. Arturi Lehkonen's had a neck injury that's been nagging him for years, and there's no indication when he'll be able to play this year. It doesn't look like he'll be able to start the season on the second line, which means that right now the Avalanche have Mittelstadt penciled in on the second line between Nikolai Kovalenko and Callum Ritchie. Yeah, those are the names of 2 real hockey players who exist in the Colorado Avalanche organization. I was surprised as you to find that out. The third line has actual NHL players on it, luckily. Miles Wood returns, ready to use his speed and size to barrel to the crease and miss the net completely, but at least he can get into the offensive zone, unlike Ross Colton. And finally, on the right side, Logan O'Connor has all the speed of Miles Wood, but with apparently zero interest in scoring goals. The fourth line, you do have a little bit of skill in a guy like Joel Kiviranta, while Parker Kelly and Chris Wagner are more of the prototypical fourth liners. They'll fight, play defense, bang along the boards. Nothing much to write home about, but they do their jobs. On the back end, the Colorado Avalanche have probably the best first pairing of any team in the NHL, starting with Cale Makar, unquestionably one of the 3 best defensemen in the NHL. Makar is just the prototype now of what you want from a defenseman: transition game, offensive zone presence, and responsible defensively. He he does it all. His partner, Devon Taves, has really fed off of that and does a great job extending plays and starting transitions into the offensive zone. He's useful in the offensive zone, but not to the extent that Makar is. But he's also willing to take on a little bit more responsibility than Cale Makar is, especially when Makar is pushing the puck and making plays offensively and in transition. You got more skilled puck-moving defensemen with Sam Girard on the second pairing. He's a great quarterback in the power play along with Makar, with some great stick work in the defensive zone, but again, his size is a bit prohibitive to making him an elite defenseman, while his partner, Josh Manson, is all about using his length and strength to shut down the opponents in the defensive zone. The third pair includes the newly acquired Eric Brandstrom from Ottawa, a solid offensive defenseman, but one who's a bit of a liability in his own zone, and finally the 26-year-old Sam Malinsky getting his first true look at the NHL, having not yet played a full season in the show. In goal, it is Alexander Georgiev, back after a down year last season where he had an .897 save percentage and a GAA above 3. I know Colorado doesn't prioritize defense a ton, but you'd like to see Georgiev play a little bit better. Luckily for the Avalanche, he was much better in his first year, so they're hoping that he will at least regress towards that mean and post a save percentage above 90 this year. Backup Justice Annunen was actually super impressive in his 14 game showing last year, so if Georgiev does struggle, I could see them giving him some more looks this year as the young 24-year-old starts to get his feet under him in the NHL.
Oh, Britta's in this?
Honestly, the Avs really didn't add a lot of people in the offseason. It was really a lot around the edges, like on the fourth line and the third pairing defenseman. They returned basically their entire core from last year and didn't take any big swings in free agency. The Avs didn't even have a first-round draft pick to critique, but it does look like thanks to injuries this year that Callum Ritchie, their 2023 first-rounder, is going to get a look in the show. I'll be interested to see how he does in the NHL because he was billed as a very cerebral player in his draft year.
That's not bad.
The Casey Middlestat was, in my opinion, one of the best trades made at the deadline last year, and I'm really glad that the Colorado Avalanche added him. With the uncertainty around Gabe Landeskog's health, adding Middlestat for basically nothing gave the Avalanche some serious depth down the middle, which is exactly where you want it. Middlestat is a great creator and playmaker who was kind of hamstrung by who he was playing along with in Buffalo, but showed flashes of the player he could one day be with the Avalanche, 10 points in 18 games, Colorado. I'm going to be so interested to see how Middlestat does this year once he gets actual NHL players with him on the second line.
The Gambletron 2000 says the winner is Cincinnati by 200 points. Why, you worthless hunk of junk?
The Avs are making the playoffs. They're going to be one of the best teams in the West. Like with so many other teams, it's going to come down a lot to goaltending. If Georgiev has a bounce-back year, they're competing with Dallas for the division title. If he plays like he did last year, they're probably finishing about where they did, second or third in that central division. Another key X-factor is going to be when they get Val Nichushkin back, what kind of shape he's going to be in, and ditto for Arturi Lehkonen. If they can't rebuild that second line and the young kids struggle, the Avs could really put themselves behind the 8 ball in a serious way. Hopefully, their high-end talent will be enough to drag them through the first few months of the season while those guys come back, but either way, the Avs are going to be a hell of a fun team to watch.
Depth so bad, it makes the Leafs not look terrible.
The AV's biggest problem is how front-loaded they are. All of their best offensive potential is on their first 2 lines. I couldn't even name a single player on their third or fourth line. If the AVs want another cup, they should consider taking my advice as a lifelong armchair GM to do something about that.